We are in a sugar crisis. It's everywhere, and we don't even realize it.
A+ on the scary sounding hook there, but does Glucose Goddess's content actually hold up? Hey everyone, I'm Abbey Sharp. Welcome to Abbey's Kitchen. Over the past few years, we have seen a growing interest and by extension fear of all things glucose. The scary spikes, the fat-storing insulin, the panic at every blip on your CGM. Leading this so-called glucose revolution is Jessie Inchauspé, aka Glucose Goddess. Now, I have reviewed a lot of Jessie's hacks and recommendations on this channel before, but my lovely British videographer Mia noted that she now has her own series airing over in the UK called Eat Smart: Secrets of Glucose Goddess. So I thought we'd take a little look-see at the first episode, and I would give you my honest thoughts on her hacks and recommendations for the lay people she brings on to help. And this would be a really good time to let you guys know that New Theory is having a massive 1-year anniversary sale. This is an amazing time to try New Theory if you've been on the fence or unsure if you'll like it, because we are never going to do a sale like this again. Let's take a look.
I'll be sharing with them all my hacks and tips designed to solve a range of common illnesses. These hacks can fix the most extreme cases of conditions we all suffer from.
Stop the car there, folks. That is a red flag if I have ever seen one. I'm just gonna put it out there that Jessie is not qualified to be giving individuals nutrition advice to treat, aka fix or solve or cure diseases, including type 2 diabetes, sleep apnea, and nodulocystic acne, as she's doing on this particular episode. In the UK, where this was filmed and produced, dietitians are the only nutrition professionals qualified to assess, diagnose, and treat nutrition-related diseases, and therefore provide what we call medical nutritional therapy for various conditions. Nutritionists, or in Jessie's case, biochemists, or really anyone else other than, of course, your medical doctor, are not qualified to give medical advice or even treat medical conditions through diet. So non-healthcare professionals making unverified claims about curing or solving diseases through nutrition may actually be violating regulations set forth by authorities like the Medicines and Healthcare Products Regulatory Agency. So yeah, these statements coming from Jessie are at best unethical and at worst possibly illegal. I'm not doing anything about it, but just saying.
Most of us are giving way too much glucose to our body. The more your glucose levels spike, the more you experience side effects.
This may be technically true, although it's not a very useful statement because glucose comes from so many different foods, many of which are very, very, very nutritious. Not to mention, your body can actually produce glucose from non-carb foods like protein as well through a process called gluconeogenesis. So you might as well just say that a good proportion of the population in the UK may be giving their body too many calories, period. Or if you wanted to make a much less ambiguous and more accurate statement about sugar specifically, you could say that most of us are consuming too much added sugars. But I digress. Jessie's first guest, Ashley, is suffering from painful nodulocystic acne, which is considered a type of chronic inflammatory disease. It's often related to hormonal imbalances like those seen in PCOS, bacterial infections, genetics, and certain medications. And while diet is certainly not the primary cause of the disease, it can play a role in acne management.
Every time your blood sugar rises quickly, your body releases a hormone called insulin to bring that glucose level down. Repeated glucose spikes and lots of insulin can cause what's called chronic inflammation. And inflammation is a big trigger for acne and lots of other health conditions.
I just want to clarify that insulin is released anytime your blood sugar rises, not just when it rises quickly. I feel like that was a very intentional word choice to kind of hammer home her key talking points that blood sugar spikes are bad when insulin is actually released to deal with any amount of carb. It's also released after eating pure protein and even when you're fasting in small amounts as well. So don't let this rhetoric make you fear any and every insulin drip. As for acne and blood sugars, this is actually evidence-based. Basically, what happens is when you eat high glycemic index foods like sugar or other naked carbs, your body requires a greater output of insulin to deal with them. Higher levels of insulin increases something called IGF-1 or insulin-like growth factor 1, as well as androgens like testosterone, which stimulate oil production that can clog pores. Chronically high blood sugars can also increase systemic inflammation, which promote inflammatory molecules like cytokines that can, of course, worsen acne. So when we look at studies testing low glycemic index diets, we do see that they can help to reduce breakouts in acne-prone folks by minimizing these massive IGF-1 outputs.
When we eat carbs, clothing is proteins, fats, or fibers.
Amen. Okay, this is the whole premise of my trademarked framework, the Hunger Crushing Combo. And I talk a lot about dressing up naked carbs with the hunger crushing compounds, fiber, protein, and healthy fats. This is actually the first time I've heard Jessie say what has kind of been my signature nutrition tip for years, but I'm loving it. It's probably the most sensible evidence-based hack that I've ever heard her share when she usually is making sensationalized statements like this.
This orange is not natural. Oranges actually do not exist in nature.
So yeah, glad she's caught wind of my feedback, because that taco with the pork for protein and the veggies for fiber and the avocado for healthy fats looks amazing. Now, Jessie's next guest is Omar, who has both type 2 diabetes and sleep apnea, neither of which Jessie is qualified to be giving personalized advice on. But anyway, type 2 diabetes and sleep apnea are intimately linked by insulin resistance and obesity, with more than 50% of people with type 2 diabetes also having OSA. Basically, excess fat tissue in the upper airway, as related to insulin resistance, can cause the airway to collapse, while poor sleep can impair glucose tolerance and increase our appetite hormones, which then perpetuates the fat gain. So yeah, these things have this bidirectional relationship and it can get messy. But let's see what she recommends.
Eat your food in the right order. If we eat the elements of a meal in the right order, we can reduce the glucose spike of that meal by up to 75%.
Ah, yes. Jessie loves this 75% stat. And even though the premise is likely true, it's a bit of a stretch. This big number is based on one pilot study of 11 people with type 2 diabetes. In the first phase of the trial, participants drank orange juice and ate white bread and then waited 15 minutes. Then they had a chicken breast and a salad with veggies and butter. In the next phase, they swapped it and they started with the veggies, waited 15 minutes, and then ate the protein and then ate the carbs last. When they calculated the difference in glucose response between the two conditions, they saw a 73.5 difference in total glucose response. Now, the problem with citing this study as gospel is A, it had 11 people with diabetes, so it's not generalizable to everyone, never mind even everyone with diabetes. B, they only measured 2 hours after the meal, which wouldn't even give you enough time to see the effect of the carbs on blood glucose in the experimental group. And C, it took 2 very extreme scenarios of eating buttered broccoli and then waiting around before you eat the rest of your meal versus drinking orange juice and waiting around to eat. And most people aren't doing either of these things. So Jessie kind of makes it sound like the average person could reduce their blood sugar by 75% from their baseline, when unless your baseline is drinking orange juice and eating white bread 20 minutes before every meal while you have diabetes, that is not going to happen. When we look at the totality of the research, we see far less promising results, where one systematic review actually found no impact of eating carbs last, while another review found a small impact but no insight into the effects long term. And according to another small study that I found, they said when folks with diabetes waited a whole 30 minutes after they ate protein and fat before they ate their carbs, they lowered their blood sugar response by 32%. Still good, but not 75%. And it's also a long time to wait before you eat your carbs. So yes, I think it's reasonable to say that if it makes sense to parse out your meal and like wait between components, it probably will slow the blood sugar response a bit. But we don't have any strong evidence to suggest that this is superior to simply dressing up our naked carbs, as we both apparently agree on, which is just far more realistic for most people to be regularly doing. Jessie's last guest, Sophie, is obese and at risk of diabetes and is looking to lose weight so that she can access life-changing weight loss surgery. As Jessie points out, excess body fat, specifically visceral fat around the midsection, increases the risk of type 2 diabetes, basically by acting as sound dampening insulation that reduces glucose uptake and our body's responsiveness to insulin. Plus, that excess fat can release pro-inflammatory chemicals like cytokines that further contribute to beta cell dysfunction. So while weight loss isn't the only way to reduce the risk of type 2 diabetes if you are at risk, research does suggest that 86% of folks with type 2 diabetes will achieve remission with a weight loss rate of around 15% of their original weight. And then on the flip side, stabilizing our blood sugars can help to regulate our hunger hormones, which reduces cravings to support a calorie deficit and weight loss efforts. So again, we see this bi-directional relationship.
I know you might think that having honey in your tea is better than having regular sugar, but when it comes to your glucose levels, all sugar is sugar. And since these sources of sugar don't contain fiber, like whole fruit, it's just a big increase in your glucose levels and a big glucose spike waiting to happen.
Jessie is right that white sugar is comparable to honey as far as your blood sugars are concerned. But it's interesting that she clarified that if it doesn't have fiber like whole fruit, you'll get a big spike in glucose, which is in stark contrast to the more clickbait inflammatory statements she's known for, like this.
Is there any such thing as good sugar?
No.
Anyway.
Every time your glucose is high, your body goes into fat storage mode, not fat burning mode. And when your glucose is steady, then it goes into fat burning mode.
I get that this is television, but it's so much more complicated than that. So yes, if you are struggling with high blood sugars thanks to insulin resistance or type 2 diabetes, insulin will continue to be pumped out, telling your body that there's no need to dig into your fat reserves for fuel because, judging just by the state of sugar in your blood, you clearly have all the fuel that you need. But in real life, insulin doesn't work like an on or off switch. It's more like a very sensitive dial that you need Barbie-sized fingers to operate and fine-tune.
Hi Barbie. Hi Barbie. Hi Barbie. Hi Barbie.
And this is where an individual's insulin sensitivity and metabolic flexibility really comes into play. And that is often related to body composition, especially that visceral fat, physical activity and aerobic fitness level, sleep quality, and stress management.
Always eat sugar as dessert, never as a snack between meals.
This basically plays into the meal order piece and also makes a lot more sense to me than parsing out your sandwich, because in this case, you would be assumedly waiting a little bit longer after you've had your fiber and protein and healthy fats in your meal before you eat the naked carbs dessert. But another hack would be to pair your naked carbs dessert with hunger-crushing compounds. So for example, you could add a few big dollops of full-fat Greek yogurt and some raspberries and almonds and put it on top of your chocolate cake. And I don't know, that sounds like an upgrade to me.
Another hack I recommend is to move for at least 10 minutes within 90 minutes of eating.
Yes, I love this hack for everyone. There's actually a very comprehensive study on this, and they found that walking for just 30 minutes after eating a meal containing 70 grams of carbs from high sugar cereal reduced the total glucose response by 10%. And even small little exercise snacks like a 15-minute walk can help. It's also great for digestion, so really a winner all around. So my takeaway from watching episode 1 of Jessie's Eat Smart Secrets of the Glucose Goddess is as follows. Number 1, I'm not sure Jessie's actually qualified to be offering one-on-one medical nutritional therapy to folks with actual health conditions, so there's that. 2, the tips that she shares here are far more evidence-based and far more sensible than the statements I see her throwing around every single podcast that will have her on. Probably because there had to be a little more fact-checking for this kind of show, which really does speak to the unregulated waters of the wild web. And 3, the before and after stories are obviously so amazing and persuasive, as are the glucose graphs that she shows. But keep in mind, these are people that do or very likely have insulin resistance at play, for whom making these changes would have the most drastic effects. Jessie's popularity is kind of dependent on her messaging that everyone should be scared of these blood sugar spikes, when we know that in healthy folks, a rise and fall in blood sugar is normal and not something to fear. And healthy folks are not going to experience the same outcomes from any other hacks as someone with diabetes. Not to mention, most, if not all of the impressive statistics and research that she shares to back up her hacks are done on folks who have diabetes, not healthy individuals. But the title of the show, Eat Smart, insinuates that these statistics apply to everyone, which is obviously important for her to expand her audience and reach, but is not evidence-based or honest. But I'm curious to know your thoughts on the show and Jessie's approach in general. And if you are looking for more evidence-based blood sugar management tips, I've got lots of great content here to check out and on my new podcast, Bite Back with Abbey Sharp. And I'll see you next time on Abby's Kitchen. Bye!